Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North East Lincolnshire series, centred around Grimsby and Cleethorpes along the Humber Estuary. North East Lincolnshire has 21 civil parishes. Here's today's for you. Welcome back to North East Lincolnshire, everybody. Now this is perhaps the easiest one I've done so far here in North East Lincolnshire, because even though on the map it looks like a linear village, it is a circle thanks to this footpath right here, which means that this should be a piece of cake, Let's head up the road first though, along the linear part of the village, and see what we can find in Wold Newton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Only a handful left in North East Lincolnshire, and today we come to the very southwest of the district. This is Wold Newton, the only one of the 21 in North East Lincolnshire to have a Market Rasen postcode, and that's despite being geographically closer to Grimsby and to Louth. It's one of the smallest in the district too, and consists of a single street which runs north to south. There are two Wold Newtons in the UK, the other one is in the East Riding, so it won't be long before we're covering that too. Although archaeological evidence out here indicates millennia of settlement within the current parish boundaries, the name can only be traced back as far as the 8th century. It's generally assumed it began as a new Anglo Saxon farm in an otherwise largely Danish landscape. Wold Newton has an incredible amount of earthworks. They are literally everywhere you look. Some are prehistoric or Roman enclosures backed up by various findings like coins, and others are medieval settlement remains. In the 1760s, Wold Newton was also at the end of a turnpike which ran from Grimsby across low-lying marshland. It ran through Brigsley too, and I unwittingly filmed a former toll house in that episode, which is near the bridge over Waith Beck. It's another peaceful place, that's for sure, and you'll have to excuse the wind noise a lot in this episode. We are, of course, on the Lincolnshire Wolds. Let's walk, folks. This is Wold Newton's main street. It's a linear village, but as I said at the top, it's possible to turn this one into a circle thanks to the location of the church, which stands high on a hill above the village. The old rectory is down here though, and this is the entrance to it at the village's southern end. Also here is an old red phone box and a standalone post box. I didn't have a look inside this one, but I can tell you that it's 100% not a book exchange. Now, you wouldn't instantly know it, but Wold Newton was an estate village. It was owned by the Earls of Yarborough from the late 18th century until the agricultural depression towards the end of the 19th century. That's when the estate was sold off to pay debts, and it was bought by one of their tenants, William Wright. The Yarboroughs had acquired the estate from the Welfit family, who had held it from the 17th century, but they had to relinquish it after having mortgaged it too heavily. Okay, so we're about halfway down the road, and at this point you find two important landmarks. One of them is the church. Now, if you were to want the church, you have to go through this gate here, there's a public footpath that runs up to it. It's up on a hill where those trees are, and that house there is aptly named Church Path Cottage. Now, we're not going to be accessing the church using that path because we're going to use a different one later. The other thing of note in this area is the village hall, and if I turn the camera around, there it is. There you go. There's the village hall. Now, when I drove in to Wold Newton, I saw a massive sign saying "Save the Village Hall." So it seems as if it's under some kind of threat of closure. Let's see if we can find out what that's all about. The village hall is indeed under threat. It's owned by the Diocese of Lincoln, who in December 2022 drew up plans to sell it in order to make money. Since 1990, it's been leased by them to a tenant who hosts regular events here. Over the years, it's provided a space for preschool education, art, music, health, church and civic happenings. This plaque on its wall tells us about Cynthia Dale, who renovated the hall some years ago. A petition has been created to save the building. It runs a really successful volunteer tea room on Sundays too, which attracts walkers, runners, cyclists and visitors from all over the area. People like me who enjoy fine village vistas like these. Continuing along Main Street, we'll come to that banner that reads "Save the Village Hall" that I was talking about. You can find it at a junction, and behind it there's a roadside cross, which was erected by William Wright as a World War I war memorial. It commemorates 4 men. Do you know, it's typical. You set up the camera to film and then a van comes down, literally about to open my mouth to say something, and then a van comes down the road. I'll have to move. Come on, which way are you going? Straight down. Anyway, right, I want to talk about this junction because Wold Newton is on the boundary with not just West Lindsey but also East Lindsey as well. That sign over there says 3.5 miles to North Thoresby, and that is an East Lindsey village, so it borders both the Lindseys, and you can easily get to them as well because this junction is right in the middle of the village. And also right in the middle of the village is the manor, which you can see right here. Right, let's carry on walking because our next destination is the church. The road now bends to the left and we're heading for a farm through which we can follow a footpath. The corner upon which this farm is sited is close to the end of the Grimsby to Wold Newton turnpike that was commissioned in 1765. An iron milestone still stands at the side of this road just to the north. The turnpike ended at the church, and after following the path through the farmyard, you start to climb a hill, and this one's not shallow. Effectively, what we're doing here is elevating ourselves up to the level of the church, which stands all on its own away from Main Street. The path turns and runs through these woods at the back of the farm before emerging at the top of a steepish ridge. In the small valley below, you can see countless earthworks, and these extend for some distance to the south. We're now at the church's lit gate. The path we're on isn't paved, so beware if you attempt this route to the church. It can be quite muddy and slippery. Okay, so we've reached the front of the churchyard. It's behind the camera as you look at it. Facing this way though, you can see quite clearly earthworks, and lots of them. Clearly at some point there was a medieval village or something right here in front of the church, and of course the church is the only remaining part of it. So let's head into the churchyard and check out the last part of what used to be here. Dedicated to All Saints, Wold Newton's current church was built in 1861 and 62 by James Fowler. He was a busy man around here at that time, wasn't he? It was then dedicated by the Archbishop of Canterbury on All Saints' Day, 1862. This is the 5th church to have stood on this site. The finest of the 5 was built in the 12th century but was destroyed during the English Civil War by parliamentary troops from Hull following a skirmish in the churchyard. A simple building replaced it in 1660, which lasted until the present church was built. In the porch we've got a notice board. There's 6 left in North East Lincolnshire now, guys. The oldest surviving artefact here from before the Civil War is its 14th century font. And this church is heavily linked to the village hall. Having the hall helps Wold Newton pay for the upkeep of the church. The petition to save the hall simply ends with the tagline, "No hall, no church." Now once you get out of the churchyard, it's just a simple case of following that footpath back to the beginning. It's very windy up here because obviously we're now above the level of the village. We're on a hill high up the road. And blimey, you can tell, we're getting very windswept up here. It's ridiculous. Hopefully it'll die down by the time we reach the next episode, because then you might be able to hear me speak. I very much doubt you can hear what I'm saying in this particular segment, but there you go. That's the nature of being on the Wolds. The higher up you go, the more elevation you have, the stronger the wind's going to get. So unfortunately it's just something you have to deal with. Anyway, that's been the parish of Wold Newton. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.